Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. Um, on the boundary, just two coaches chatting cricket. My name is Olubabalo, Coach Lou, your host for the day, and I'm with Ospinash Apiu. How's it, brother, man?
Um, good evening, Lou. It's been another big break before our next episode, but nice to see you and speak to you again. But
Yeah, no. If we were batsmen, a lot of people would be complaining about our consistency, I guess. But then we can just blame it on the fact that there are not enough test matches, so we can't really be consistent.
no, what we tell them is when we get together, we put on a show. So that's what needs to happen. We don't have enough time together, but when we get together, we put on a show.
Yeah, no, we definitely make it big. And today we actually have a topic that touches on, I think it touches a lot on our name, the name of the podcast, and the slogan that we have. Just two coaches chatting cricket. The first three episodes that we had, we were talking about what's going on in the game out there in South Africa. But today we are talking about a technique. Um, Before we even get started, coach, when it comes to your technique, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? It could be about batting, it could be about bowling, could be about wicket keeping, but when it comes to your technique and your coaching style, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
For me, technique is very important, but it's very unique. You can have uh, as they say, textbook technique. We can't all have that, but you have your own technique and how you execute what needs to be executed. And when it comes to the three disciplines, I feel like the bowling technique, unless you're bowling leg spin, the bowling technique is sort of the easiest one to get a hold of and find your way with it. While the batting needs a lot of tweaking as you play more and as you become better, because especially us who do junior cricket, and junior cricket, it's about seeing it and hitting it more than building onto that technique. But you need a base of technique and then just see it and hit it. And then as you get older, as you start playing against more competitive bowlers and all that, that technique gets tested a lot more. So I feel like bowling technique you can grasp and sort of just tweak as you get older. But the batting technique really evolves along the way, and you really need to hone it a lot more than the bowling one.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. And the thing is, when it comes to cricket, cricket is a very technical sport. Even the smallest of things that we do on the cricket field, technique comes into play. How you pick up the ball, there's a whole technical um, analysis around it. How you throw the ball for you to avoid injury. There's a certain way that you must follow, which is your technique. But I was listening to a webinar that was hosted, I think it was by EP Cricket and Border Kai. Russell Domingo was talking on that webinar. And he said something very interesting for me in that when it comes to him, technique is very important. He said it is important to keep preaching technique and to keep focusing on technique. I don't entirely disagree with him, but I actually agree a lot. And you know what they say in modern cricket? They normally say there's a saying that goes around that technique is overrated. What do you think about that? The whole narrative that technique is overrated because you're coaching an under 11 team today and you tell an under 11 player to do a certain thing and then he's going to talk back and going to say, but coach, I saw Steve Smith doing this. And how do you go about trying to get them to understand the importance of playing a certain way or holding a bat a certain way when it comes to a technique?
Uh, so I I don't want to say technique is not important because I feel like that's very wrong. But I do believe like the way you instill technique into players is very different for each player because I'm one of those coaches who, especially first coaching session, meet players. I like them to do what they do, and then I see what how they do what they do, and then, as you say, we try to eliminate the injuries. We try to improve the technique that they already got. So I'm not going to take, okay, maybe at under 11 and under 9, we can still fix that. But I'm not going to take a slinky bowler and try to eliminate that sling action totally. But we try to make it more conducive to accuracy because accuracy is very important in your bowling. And it, we try to improve what they have and technically improve what they have, make it more user friendly, if you can say that, what they already have. So when people say technique is overrated and technique doesn't exist, I feel like we aren't limited to what used to be that textbook technique. We can't all play the forward defense the same way, and we need to sort of look into the textbook technique and see why it was done the way it was done, and then pick up the fundamentals within a technique that need to be there for every child and every player.
Yeah, no, I like the word that you fundamentals. I think for me, I would agree that technique is overrated, but there's fundamentals within one's technique that are not overrated. They'll never be overrated. Personally, I think there's when we break down the technique, I'm going to talk about batting technique to be specific for now. If we break down the technique, you either have an unorthodox technique, you're a Steve Smith, you're a Shivranine Chandapur, you've got an unorthodox technique, or you've got a flawed technique, which is your technique is not necessarily unorthodox, but it has technical flaws that need to be fixed. I'm not going to mention names for my own safety. Or you have orthodox technique. So when we're looking at these three things, an orthodox technique can still have flaws. An unorthodox technique can also still have flaws. But now the main thing is we go back to the fundamentals. Head position. Is your head in the right place when you're playing your shots? We talk about we talk about the because when it comes to cricket, your head is the heaviest part of your body. So, depending on the shot that you're playing, your head position needs to be somewhere in a certain place. Playing on the front foot, you know where your head is. So, it means that you're understanding that fundamental when it comes to weight distribution. Then we go to point of impact. When playing in a certain shot, where am I supposed to be? We go to bowling. You're a fast bowler. Your front arm needs to work. Why does it need to work? It's the fundamental of your bowling technique. So whether you have an orthodox technique or you have an unorthodox technique, it doesn't really matter as long as you have those fundamentals or those core fundamentals of your technique, as long as they exist, coach, it doesn't matter. You're still going to be able to play the on drive if all the cores of, or if all the core fundamentals of your technique are there. However, the issue is when you have an orthodox technique but it lacks certain fundamentals. The issue is when you have an unorthodox technique, but it lacks a certain core fundamentals for you to be able to succeed. And I think this is what we mean when we say technique is overrated. We can make an example with Steve Smith. Different technique. There's nothing wrong with his technique if you look at point of impact where he plays the ball. Um, there's only a few small things here and there.
Balance, because that's
Yeah,
for me the most key thing.
exactly. So it's I think one of the things that a lot of young batters tend to get wrong is wanting to look, wanting to look beautiful when you play your shots. I think it's one of the issues even I had growing up as a young cricketer. You end up being in that mental state where it's no longer about hitting the ball now for you. It's about trying to look sexy, if I may say. And modern cricket is about effectiveness, bruh. If you score runs, if runs are coming, nobody really cares how you look. Except for me, I don't enjoy watching Steve Smith bat.
I'm all, I'm one of those who doesn't critique too much on the unorthodox. One of my favorites, like when you're talking text selection, we spoke a lot about Rivaldo Munsami not making the test team when he's in top form. His technique is not, we'll say, textbook, but I love it. It's beautiful. I want to use the word, it accentuates some of the other fundamentals, and maybe he uses his foot movement in a lot less when he's playing some of his shots, but he's got beautiful hands. He knows how to manipulate the bat and the ball. So, and he knows how he plays. So it's about using what you have, and I'm one of those who, it's not that I don't like orthodox techniques. I love those. Everyone loves a Baba Ashram covered right, but I'm not too critical on those that have slightly different techniques.
Yeah, no, like I said, if it's effective, if it's working, then go with it. One thing that I try to always preach to kids when I coach is, first thing is, are you comfortable? Is this what you're comfortable in? Then if the player says, yes, coach, this is what I'm comfortable in, is it effective? Is it working? And if we see that it's not working, then I say, this is what I would like you to do in terms of your technique. Please try it out, see if you're comfortable, and see if it's working. Because as coaches, we want to create an environment where players can learn on their own. We are not spoon feeding them. I recently made a video about that, where we are not spoon feeding them or over coaching. We sort of give them the information that they need, and then we allow them to find the other information that they need. Because at the end of the day, we can talk about the technique all day, but then it doesn't really make sense if someone with an unorthodox technique is scoring heaps of runs. You with your own orthodox textbook technique, you're not scoring any runs, because batting after all is about scoring runs. So I think I think we can agree that we both say your technique, it doesn't matter how your technique looks or how you look, as long as your technique has the building blocks of a technique that will make you successful.
Uh, Totally agree. And another point we need to stress is with what they calling textbook technique and all of that, is how a batsman bats against spin and how a batsman bats against seam might, like his success rate might be influenced a lot by what we're calling here a technique. So some players who love using their hands, play the ball very late, which are all good fundamentals, might struggle on seaming pitches or might struggle on spinning pitches differently to succeeding vice versa. So your technique and the textbook technique that they try to use and try to make the example with is theoretically supposed to make you succeed in both. So
Yeah.
a player who grows up in Australia will take that orthodox technique and that technique and play it on faster pitches, bouncier pitches, and adapt that to being able to cut, pull, play faster bowling. While a player born in India or in the subcontinent might take the exact same textbook technique and adapt it to play spin more. So that's what I'm saying. We use the fundamentals, we color in where we want to color in, and then we use that to bat effectively.
And another thing when it comes to it, Coach Ara, is the fact that Graham Smith taught me one thing, that batting technique is like a soft. Sometimes you need to update it every now and then. What he would do is he would play around with his technique based on the bowlers that he would be facing. He would try certain different things based on the bowler, based on conditions, and I think that's why he's one of the most successful players that we've had in this country, because he knew he knew his limitations in terms of his technique. That was number one. I think it is important to understand your technique and the limitations that it has, so that you're able to work around it. He knew and he understood his limitations. He took those limitations and he worked around them. So whenever there was a bowler that worked him out, he would go back, try and find out how they worked him out, and what are they doing to try and exploit a weakness in his technique. Then he would find a way to counter that. And I think for me that's reminiscent of a software. You always need to update your software, look for bugs, remove the bugs, update the software. And I think for especially batters with limitations in their technique, it is important that they are constantly trying to counter these bowlers that find them out, and they're constantly trying to update the technique. But also, it is important to find a balance between you updating your technique and you changing your technique too much to a point where you end up losing yourself. You end up losing your entire technique because you're constantly working on it. It goes back to a question I had. You know how a lot of batters, when they're struggling for runs, the first thing they go for is technique. You as a coach, how do you go about trying to help a batter who's struggling for form? Now I'm not talking under 11. I'm talking at a bit of a senior level now. You've got, let's say, you've got an under 15 player, you've got a senior player in your club. Bloke is struggling for runs. What's the first thing that you normally look at?
Mm, so I look two different things is what I look at and what I want them to look at. Because sometimes when you're speaking to a veteran and you're saying not under 11, but it actually sort of works all the way through this for me, is how did you feel when you were scoring runs? It's a feeling more than uh, the mechanics. We would say it's not all how you moved and how it's how you felt. Once you feel that way, because that's where you get the rhythm and whatnot, and then everything, the techniques and the thing comes back to muscle memory, and then you sort of can get back to how you were doing it before. So before we go into the nets and look at what is wrong and try to fix that, we try to get into the head and get the mental hurdle through and on how you felt when you used to bat well. Then, because what a lot of boys do, or cricketers anyway, is when a batsman is struggling, they go into the net and try to fix the front arm, fix the balance, they falling over, the back lift is coming from second slip instead of first, whatever they were doing, they feel they're doing wrong. When sometimes it's getting to a bowling machine and try to hit it as hard as you could. That's how you were doing it before. And then we look at how you do it when you're just trying to do it. And then we see, which, oh, it's now coming from first slip. Don't overthink about where it's supposed to be coming from and all of that. But that's how I look at it. You get into your head, try to make you happy again, and then try to make it come back. Don't try to go fetch it too much. Don't
Yeah,
fetch
no,
your technique too much.
I like that approach, Coachy. I like that approach. I think modern cricket or modern sport in general, it's about, most of the things are here.
The head
It's
game.
about where you are mentally, where you are emotionally. So I like that plan. I like that approach where you want to know, I have you been in the same state of mind that you've been in when you were scoring runs, or has anything changed in terms of how you are thinking? I would take it as far as have you changed anything in your approach? I normally ask a question like that. Have you changed anything in your approach? Because sometimes it happens, especially if you're a batsman who's very fidgety. I'll make an example like your Steve Smith again. Even the smallest of things around them put them off. Have you changed your batting gloves? Have you changed your bat? Have you changed your batting stance? Have you changed even the smallest of things? Have you changed your routine before you go onto bat? Even those smallest of things, sometimes they count. You find that it's not necessarily the fact that you're out of form, it's just that there's that one thing that's missing in your routine that you used to use, and your mind and your body is used to a certain routine that the minute there's a change in routine, everything just goes wrong. Yeah, but so those are the smallest things. And then the other thing we go to is how have you been going out? We look, is there a pattern in terms of how you've been going out? Um, then we take it from there. How do you feel when you middle four balls, but all of them go straight to a fielder? Do you feel like you need to change how you're hitting the ball, or do you feel like you need to change something? And I think these are approaches that most coaches should adopt. Instead of the minute a batter scores two ducks, we're going back into the nets now, spending long hours trying to fix a technique. But sometimes it's not even the technique that's wrong. So I think for me, I'm with you on that one, Coachy. Let's start here, see if everything is still fine here. Then we can go into a routine. Then maybe we can say, okay, maybe it is the technique. Because sometimes it happens. Sometimes it is the technique.
Sometimes it
Sometimes,
is.
yeah, sometimes you're not in the right place. Sometimes you're falling over. Sometimes it's the hand. Sometimes it's something. But I think we are not saying we should rule out the fact that a technique sometimes needs to be fixed, but we also don't want to overstate the fact that a technique needs to be updated. Because if your technique is good, you don't have to update it. You don't have to keep changing certain things about the technique. Yeah. So whenever runs, and sometimes it's okay to be out of form. It's normal. It happens. I've seen AB de Villiers out of form, bruh. And that's something that none of us ever thought we would ever see, even though it was only twice in his whole career. But eventually, there was a point in his career where runs were not coming. I remember he got like three ducks in a row, and it happens to the best of them. That's one thing that batters need to understand. That's one thing that coaches need to understand. That sometimes it's not the technique. Sometimes you just need a break from the game, and sometimes you really do need a break from the game.
And sometimes you just face someone who is in real form. So sometimes it's not you, it's him who's great and he's swinging it square. Zaire Khan to Grant Smith. Maybe it's not your fault, Grant. It happens like that too. So, and another thing, this takes us back to maybe slightly off topic is why you have less batsmen from what's previously disadvantaged areas is like building that technique takes a lot of time. Like building your own technique takes a lot of time, and it's not just nets. It's maybe nets with the coach, nets my sessions with the coach, getting that towards being what you need it to be, and then taking that you've built and using it in games. So no matter how much you train, because training is very good, but no matter how much you train, executing it in the game is where you refine your technique. And you know that that day when I scored 50, I was punching it with the front arm more than it's about using your technique, which is how you find the perfect technique. So that is what I think is one of the stumbling blocks for previously disadvantaged players becoming batters. But it's something that as junior coaches, we are from those areas. So we need more coaches in those areas to assist those kids so we can have more of them coming through.
Yeah, I think there's one thing that I feel batsmen or batters, I think they don't understand the importance of. When it comes to batting, I always tell even the guys that I play with, when it comes to batting, throwdowns, throwdowns are more important than you facing bowlers, especially when you are trying to see preseason or just off season, where that's where you're trying to fix certain things about your game. Throwdowns are the way to go. Don't face bowlers. Let bowlers do their own target bowling, and then you just go throwdowns because that's where you are able to focus on the basics. That's where you're able to fix all the core fundamentals of your technique. Throwdowns are the way to go. You want to fix that bottom hand. You feel like there's too much bottom hand in your shots. You want to work on the strength of your top hand. Throwdowns, not bowling machine. Throwdowns, and I always say this. It is important that throwdowns. I've seen it work and I've seen them work, and I'm sure a lot of professional batters can agree. It's easy to face a bowler in the nets even when you're out of form. But when it comes to throwdowns, that's when you need to remember your basics, how you time the ball and stuff like that. So I think overall, Coachy, we agree technique is important, but it is not the be all of everything. It is okay to have an unorthodox technique as long as you have the core fundamentals of a technique. It is okay to have a different technique to your friends. You don't have to copy anyone's technique. A technique is like your identity. It is who you are. It is how you are. And it is important that we also preach to our batters. It's okay for them to express themselves. What I normally say is, as much as I don't want to lose wickets, but if the ball is in your slot, the ball is there for you. You feel like this ball is where I want it. I always say go for it. As long as you're going to go with a full heart, you're going to fully execute, and you won't be caught in two minds thinking, Ish, what if I go out? No. If you go for it, you go out, we've got something to work with. You went for it, you executed. Now we got something to work on. We see this is why you got caught. Probably just a good catch, or you maybe were falling over. Then we try and fix that. But now if you're going half-hearted, we don't know what to fix because you did not go for it. You were caught in two minds because you were thinking, what if I go out? Or do I have the right, my technique, is my hand in the right position? But if you just fully go for it, fully blooded, then we know, we go back, we say, you went for it, it didn't work out. Yes, you went out. It's okay. What went wrong?
Uh, the fundamentals of batting. I say when you look at the batting, your batting, you go attack, leave, and then defend. If you can't attack a ball, if it's going to get you out, you block it, which is the defend. If it's not going to get you out, but you can't attack it, that's when you leave. But option number one is always to try attack the ball, which is hit it and score run. So if you look at it that way, because I think a lot of batsmen want to survive and then see if, oh, that's a bad ball, now I can hit it. When I think it's the other way around that you should think. You should say, I want to hit it. Oh, it's a good ball. Then you defend rather than have your head in the defensive and then try to attack. Because I think it's really hard to move from that gear two into a gear five rather than it is to hit the brakes and come back to a defensive mindset. So what you're saying is first option should always be to attack. And attack doesn't always mean hit it for six, but your first option should always be to attack the ball. And then if you see the ball, which is the playing it on merit thing, if you see that's a good ball, it's in a good area, not your area, that's when you start either leaving the ball or defending the ball. But attack first, and then we get into a shell and try to defend the good ones.
I think also it comes from the fear of failure. I think that's something that we have as one of the biggest problems in our cricket in South Africa is we are very conservative in our approach. We are we play our cricket. We don't we play our cricket. We played way opposite to how the Australians played. Australians are going to be five down and they will still be looking to run between the wickets, run hard between the wickets. If there's a bad ball, still put it away. But for us, it's mostly okay. We are 4 5 down. Let's try and just block it out. Then take your odd ones and twos there. And I think cricket has moved on from that. It's sides who are brave that are winning runs, that are scoring runs. It's the sides that don't really care too much about technique, that are doing well. I've seen some very shots that I don't like, and and running scoring runs of the same shots. So I think, yeah, it is what it is. Cricket is evolving, and we will probably get to a point where we see very weird techniques, and I'm all for it as long as they're effective. But yeah, I think we that is all about a technique. In fact, that is not all, but that is all from us
Yeah.
today. When technique. But before we close it off, what are your thoughts about the SA T20 challenge that's going on? I see the Warriors are undefeated. I don't think anyone would have called that. Even as someone who stays here in Port Elizabeth, in Gqeberha, came to me and said, the Warriors are going to be undefeated. Oh, no, they lost their first game yesterday. But if you came to me and said
Yeah.
they're going to win in 8 matches, I probably would have laughed it off a bit.
Uh, Not that I thought the Warriors were weak. They actually were in my top three teams going into the tournament, but maybe top three is third because I had that strong Titans lineup. I was hoping that they'd start off strong. Then the
From
Lions batting lineup also. Yeah, that strong Titans batting lineup that we had. So I was hoping that Clausen and Aiden, before they left, they'd leave us with 3 wins or something like that. So I had that in mind with Titans, Lions, and then Warriors. Because I think the Warriors are not too stacked with star power, as in players who are going to the IPL, players who are playing for the Proteas, but everyone in their second team there, as in not second team, everyone who's just below that IPL Protea lineup, they've got quite a lot of big boys there. Jordan Herman, uh, Breske. So they were always up there for me. Maybe not 8 out of 8, but I always had them as making the semifinals and competing.
Yeah, no, thanks, Coach Ara. We are still gonna chat about the whole tournament, especially as you as a Titans fan. I really want to know your thoughts about the whole Titan because okay, no, let us leave it. Let us leave it for
Uh,
the next. Let's leave it
let's
for
not go in.
let's not get into it. But yeah, enjoyed the chat with you about a technique today. And I hope you also enjoyed it. I hope viewers as well enjoyed it. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Please, if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can learn a lot about cricket. Also, here I forgot to tell you, one of the commenters they complained that we use each jargon a bit too much, that sometimes they get lost. So I say whenever you get lost, just comment on the page, and we will gladly explain it to you. We get carried away. We love the sport. We're passionate about it. So sometimes we tend to get carried away. Yeah, Coachy, I don't know if you wanna close it off.
I've got nothing else to say, but always nice to chat cricket, uh, fun times all the time.
Oh yeah, sure. Cheers, everyone.